Hi, welcome to Tech Talk. Thank you for coming. There's donuts, as most of you have figured out already. Thank you, Peter. So I'm Jesse Sims, the chair of Tech Talk. Peter Grant is the co-chair, and Linda Kicker is the secretary. Thank you, Linda, for setting up the room and pushing out and promoting it. We appreciate it. And Casey is going to be filming Dan. So we're going to try and start looking into maybe adding some of these presentations online on YouTube. I know a lot of people can't attend, it's far away, they're busy. So this can be a way that other people can take advantage of these presentations without having to physically come here. So I'm going to let Dan introduce himself because he knows more about himself than I do. And Dan, take it away.
Hi everyone, thanks for having me today. And hello people watching at home on YouTube. Get 10, 15 views on this easily. So, okay. So, hi. See if my thing's working. Good, excellent. Hi, I'm Dan there. And in case you haven't realized already, I move around a lot when I talk. Don't feel the need to track me. If you want to take notes, that's no problem. I've got a slideshow here, as you can see. If you want the slide deck afterwards, I'd be happy to get it for you. I just don't know how useful it'll be until after we're done here. So, my name's Dan. I like dark backgrounds and light text. I hate staring up at a PowerPoint presentation that is black text on a white background because I'm reading words on a light bulb. Thank you not. So everything looks like this. I am the ILS administrator for MCLD. I mean, Integrated Library System Administrator. You have to breathe somewhere in there to get to get the title out. So I'm the Polaris guy because that's what we have. And speaking of Polaris, I've worked with Polaris ILS since it was in beta. The library I used to work for in Central Washington, they got a sweet deal on it because they were looking at upgrading their ILS at the time. This was in the late 90s. And they almost bought a product from a company at the time called Gaylord Brothers called Galaxy. They actually said, no, wait. We have another space-themed ILS for you. Yeah. So we got into Polaris really early. So we got to see all this new technology, all this wonderful stuff. It was a huge step up from what we came with. It was also bringing about 2 weeks of downtime at this one time. That was fun. So yeah, been using Polaris for a while. There we go. I worked in libraries for 22 years. This, I believe, if I'm doing the math correctly, means that this is the year that I've been in libraries more than half of my life. So I've been doing this a while. I was lucky enough out of high school to find two things that I really liked to do. The first thing was professional stage technician, which is a fun job, but you can starve to death in between shows. So I went to work for the library, and it turns out that I liked that too. So yeah. And I love open source anything, open source hardware, software, whatever. I know this is coming off of a Mac. I'm using an iPhone. Look, I'm not an icon. Okay, so but yeah, I do love open source, pretty much everything, which is why I love sharing anything that I can with a library. So okay, what are we doing today? Well, we're going to talk about heavy mysteries. Now, for some of you, this might not be all that heavy. We got any database administrators in the room? Oh, thank God, that's better than I thought. I think 2 or 3 people are going to raise their hands. I was going to say this, then this might not be for you. But anyway, so we're going to talk about some heavy mysteries. We're going to talk about SQL, SIP, IT, and other 4-letter words. And the reason we're going to talk about these things specifically, Jesse asked if I could talk about talking to IT as an entity. And I said, yes, but I also want to talk about these other 2 things because these are things that librarians talk about all the time and don't always know what they mean. So, we're going to find out how your ILS talks to itself and talks to other services. Because it does this all the time. I mean, some of you have Overdrive, some of you have a cloud library, some of you have something that your ILS talks to. And since this is Maricopa County, most of us have Polaris. So we're going to talk about how Polaris talks to other things. And we're going to talk about how to talk to IT to get things that you need or want. So, little bit of everything, but I hope it's at least somewhat entertaining. But why? Why? Because some of you are probably, technologists in your own right. I'm sure you are. Because this stuff shouldn't be mysterious. I don't expect a rank and file sort of reference librarian that's out in a branch to understand what I mean when I talk about how SIP works and how SQL works or anything like that. But I kind of would wish that they at least understand that when I talk about SIP, what it means. Or when I talk about a SQL database, what that means. And usually it's just, And that's it. So, yeah, yet it is mysterious. And like I said, so many librarians throw around terms like SIP authentication. Well, Overdrive has SIP authentication, but the self-check-in machine has SIP authentication. What's that mean? Authenticates through SIP? Okay. And the fact is that your IT department may know more or less than you think it does. Because it's computers, right? You know, and they're working in a library, they're working with a library, so obviously they know about library computers and stuff. We'll talk about that. So we're going to get started right away, because I don't want to keep you longer than I have to. I don't have to keep you at all, the door's right there. But we're going to start with SQL. It's often pronounced SQL. I have said SQL from the day I started playing with SQL. Some people say SQL. Those people are wrong. And if you read XKCD, they had a great comic recently about how a younger person pronounces it squill. And it's like, I'll allow that. So, SQL. That's what I say. SQL is fine. Everybody knows what we're talking about. But now, this is a subject among people where I've watched people get into arguments at bars. So, So SQL is the inner monologue of your ILS. It's how your ILS talks to itself. When you're using Polaris, or if some of you are using Leap, Leap and Polaris Staff Client are talking to a database through SQL. That's how it discusses things with itself. SQL is short for Structured Query Language, and it's a standard set of instructions for manipulating data within a relational database. So it's a language all its own. But great, what's relational database? What the heck? So a relational database is a collection of stuff organized into tables. And those tables have columns and rows. So if you're thinking of Excel, hold on, we'll get there. These tables have common links between them. Some tables and rows have the same linkage between them, whereas something is named the same here as it is over here, and because those share commonalities, relationships, you can make those tables talk to each other. And that's what creates the relationships. Here's where the relational database comes in. These links between these tables create a relationship that you can use to get interesting data, to get the information that you need out of your database using SQL. It's kind of like Excel on steroids, because like I said, we get to Excel. All of us, I'm sure, at some point have had an Excel spreadsheet in front of us where you have like barcode, patron name, patron address, things like that. And then there's the rows. So it's kind of like that, very much like that indeed. And it's also like Access, if Access were actually worth using. So yeah, there are databases everywhere. This shouldn't be a surprise, especially in this day of Google and Amazon and Microsoft as well, watching pretty much everything you make. Everybody's talking about their databases, their data sets. What do they know about you? Polaris knows quite a bit about you. Funny enough, it knows everything you've checked out, at least for however long you set that for. So there are multiple database products and projects. Just because something uses SQL doesn't mean it uses the same flavor of SQL, and that's where you can run into problems. So for instance, Polaris ILS uses Microsoft SQL Server. Polaris is so entrenched in the Microsoft stack that you would be forgiven for thinking it was developed in Red Hat. So yeah, Polaris uses Microsoft SQL Server, but Sierra, the other big product from Innovator, uses Postgre. And that's one of those things, I don't know if that's how it's pronounced, PostgreSQL. It's something I've always read and never heard. So pardon me if I'm wrong there. Uses PostgreSQL. Lots of commonalities, subtle differences sometimes. Koha ILS, which is an open source ILS, uses a product called MySQL or MariaDB. And these came about because of a fight between the MySQL people and other people. It's boring, but that's why there's two. One's purple, the other's violet. It's pretty much the same thing. But each one of these all use SQL, but they use kind of a different flavor. There are little things that one does that the other doesn't. This one does something that that one doesn't. So, yeah. So, okay. But let's just talk about SQL in general. It's not quite a programming language. Now, this is another barroom brawl between nerds, but you can't compile it. If I can't compile it, so I don't refer to it as a programming language. But it's used, like I said, to extract, change, add, remove, update, manipulate, gather data from a relational database. So let's write some code. Now, I promise we're not going to throw a huge thing up here, but what we're going to do is look at the basic garden variety. I need a thing out of this database. How do I get it? And this is how you get it. You select things from tables where conditions and or not other conditions. That's it. That's your basic select statement. Now, granted, you can write SQL queries as long as your arm, and I have. They're fascinating to read. But this is your basic select statement. So I want to select something or some things from a table or a set of tables where certain conditions are met and or not other conditions. Now, this last line, purely optional. Maybe you don't have another condition. You just need, X, Y, Z, that's all you need. So if you were going to the store, you want some bananas. And you wanted a bunch of bananas that was ripe and had 6 bananas in the bunch. This is kind of the SQL query for that. I want to select bananas from the bananas table, because that's where it's located. I want the status of those bananas to be ripe, and I want the quantity to be 6. Now keep in mind, there might be multiple bunches on the table that are 6 bananas and ripe. So with a SQL query like this, you would get all of those, and your shopping cart would be full. But they're only 79 cents a pound. So this is an honest-to-God SQL statement from Polaris. This will pull up a charges amount, which is the fines and fees, from the patrons table, polaris.patrons. I'll tell you what the no log means in a second. Where the barcode is this barcode. This is my barcode. Anyway, so if you were to execute this statement within the Polaris database, you would get how many charges, how many fines and fees that I currently have. Spoiler alert, nothing. But it would still return nothing. This person owes $0.00. The no log is just a special little thing that basically says, when I ask this question, my question is no more important than anybody else's question. Because if you don't put that no log in there, you can basically say, this person out in the branch that's also trying to look something up, to heck with them. Do me first. This no log basically kind of just says, it's just a question. Get to it whenever. And by get to it whenever, it'll be returned in less than a second. So it's fine. Okay. That's SIP. Let's talk about SIP, and we're going to talk about how they kind of work together. So SIP is like Esperanto for library devices, services, and automation. If you don't know what Esperanto is, you're probably better off. But it's a made-up language that was sort of born out of the idea that people have problems talking to each other. Let's create a new language that everybody will learn, and then we can all talk to each other. Now, I don't know what's wrong with the existing languages that already were there, and everybody just learning one of those, but whatever. So, your ILS needs to talk to a bunch of stuff. Some things you might not even think about. The self-check-ins, the self-checkouts, the sorting machines, Overdrive, Hoopla, goodness knows. It's talking to lots of stuff. But everything's different. I mean, your self-check machines may be manufactured by 3M Biblioteca or some other company, and then Overdrive, it's not the same thing as those, it's a totally different company. So, all of these things speak a different language. They're using different technologies. They're using different stacks. So, if they share a common language, that does make things easy. So, that's where SIP comes in. You'll sometimes see this called SIP2. That's because it's Standard Interchange Protocol version 2, yay. And the protocol is sort of the important part, because it's a protocol. It's just a set of instructions that everybody kind of agrees on that lets everything talk to your ILS and your ILS to talk back to it. It was originally created by 3M in 1993 and updated in, 2006, yeah. So, it's been around a while. Obviously, it's a 3M product, so naturally all of your 3M machines work really well with SIP. And it uses a call and response methodology. So it's very much a sort of hello, yes, information, okay. It's very much a 1, 2, 1, 2 working. And it's what nerds call an immediate transactional protocol. When you make a SIP command, when a SIP command goes out from whatever goes to your ILS, there is no pause, there is no wait, there's no test. It's not, when it says hello, it expects a response, and it expects it quickly. So, okay, but wait. Why SIP? We just talked about SQL. Certainly you can get information out of your database with SQL. You can do things with SQL, right? So why not just use SQL? Wouldn't that work? Yes. But every ILS, like I just said, uses a different flavor of SQL. So your 3M self-checkout machines wouldn't be talking to your Sierra ILS the same way that it would be to your Polaris ILS, to the Koha ILS, to Evergreen, to whatever. Everything uses a sort of different variety of SQL. So that's problem one. Problem two is the simple security. You have two kinds of users in this scenario. You have a database user and you have a SIP user. Now, a database user already has at least some level of access to everything. They might not be able to overwrite it, but they can probably pull all of it. And that can be a security problem. If you don't want to give a user database access, if you don't have to, you don't. Database users are very strictly controlled by most IT security protocols. If they're not, someone needs to be fired. And the ability, a SIP user is a library assistant. That is really the ability that SIP has. It does not have a whole lot of ability above and beyond someone that sits at your desk, answers basic questions, checks things in and out, looks things up. That is what SIP does. It's very good for that. And because it's just a library assistant, it doesn't have all the authority to do bad things to your catalog or to your user database or anything like that. It's just asking for information and getting it back. So, okay, we looked at SQL. Let's look at SIP. Isn't that magnificent? Oh my God, that's beautiful. So this looks like crap, but it actually has a method to the madness. So 23 is just the SIP code for a patron status call. Now, the way SIP works, call and response. When it says 23 after it expects a response that starts with 24. A SIP check-in command is 09. When that goes out, it expects a response that is 10. If it doesn't get that back, it knows that's not the right answer. And then things happen. And those things might just be, well, that's not for me, that's for something else. Because a machine can send out multiple SIP requests at the same time. So 23, this just says patron status. Looking up a patron status. 001 is a language code. In this case, English. So this is an English SIP server talking to an English database. 20180807 is 2018, August 7th. That's the date. It is time-stamped, and because it's time-stamped, you'll be unsurprised, I hope to know, that 11/23/20 is the time. There's just no punctuation, really, except for these little bars. AO is the institution ID. This is your branch. It's optional with a patron status call. With some calls, it's not. SIP's a little different, but in this case, I did not put a branch ID because it doesn't matter. Anybody at any branch can look up a patron status, and the same is true of SIP. AA 1230004231819. If you notice, that's my barcode again. That is the patron identification. And the thing is without SIP, within SIP rather, throughout. That's what I was trying to go for. These letter codes remain constant. Anytime you see an AO, it's an institution ID. Every time you see AA, it's a standard patron identification. Doesn't matter what kind of string it's in. That's what it is. This AD7618 is not my PIN or password. Totally changed that. It's not that I don't trust you, it's that I don't trust anybody. But this would be the PIN or password for that patron. You don't have to transmit that. SIP will return different information if you don't. But in this case, we're going to assume that this is coming from a self-checkout machine. And a lot of us have our self-checkout machines set up that you have to put in a card, and then you have to put in a PIN. Not all of us do, but Maricopa County Library District does. We had an issue about 10 years ago. Anyway, and we haven't had that issue since. So put in the PIN or password, so that's what's in there. And then this stuff at the end, this does a complex mathematical equation that I don't even understand. I have written code that processes this mathematical equation, and I totally borrowed it from some other open source project. But what this does is it basically says, Here's the answer to a problem that includes a mathematical operation on everything that came before it. And what that does is it verifies the system that nothing's garbled, nothing's mixed up, the communication was good. So, there you go. That's the call. Here's the response. But you're asking for information. When you're calling out for information, you don't have information, so naturally what you get back is going to be more than what you started with. It's a 24 response. 23, 24, 9, 10, 11, 12. These all have different codes within SIP. AO18, that is a branch code. And that came back as Queen Creek, where at the time I believe I was registered. So branch code is Queen Creek, 18. If you look in our Polaris database, the branch code for Queen Creek is 18. Once again, there's that barcode, same thing, AA, 1, 2, 3, blah, blah, blah. AE is the patron name. In this case, Messer, Daniel Lord. The reason it's in all caps is because it's in all caps in our database. We put everything in all caps when we enter calls. If you didn't do that, it would return it in whatever camel case or whatever version that you used. The BL and CQ, these are just codes for, is this a valid patron? And was that a valid password or PIN? In other words, can this patron use their card without any blocks, any problems at all? And was that their correct password? As you can see there, as you go down the string, BLY for yes, CQY for yes. BH is the currency designation. So now we know what kind of currency we're talking about. This usually isn't a problem for libraries since most of them operate in the same country, but for those who don't, it's built into the system, and USD is, no surprise, US dollars. FA and BV are fines and fees. They're a little bit different, but it's boring as to why. But as you can see, as I told you before, I don't know a thing, so I'm consistent, by God. So, okay, those are the fines and fees. And this PC 4257992. What this is the unique patron record number in the database. Even if I get a new card, if they do it right, sometimes they don't, but if they do it right, they should go to the record that already exists and just update the barcode. They should not make me a new record. So that's what this is. This is the unique patron record number. So we know that there may be another Daniel Messer in the database, but there's only this one that we're dealing with right now. AF and AG are screen and print messages. There's two. And the reason there's two is back in the day, printing to paper was expensive, and you could change things to suit your needs. So if you were spitting something out on a printer, you could just have it say, okay. And that saves you on your dot matrix bill. Or if you're just printing it to a screen, you could say patron status is okay. This patron's fine, or fantastic. You can do whatever you want kind of here, but most of us use the standard patron status is okay. And then at the end, you'll notice that that number is different if you care. Same thing. The AY1, AZ, blah, blah, blah. What that is verifying that everything that came before that is correct. There's no errors. This is a good string. That's it. So, when you, for instance, have a customer walk up to a self-checkout machine, they scan their card, they put in their PIN, the self-checkout machine, the first thing it does, before it checks anything out, is going to go execute basically a 23 command, say, hey, got this person in front of me, they okay? And the ILS will return, well, here's the information on it. You make the call. Because, funny enough, usually the ILS isn't making the call, the machine is set up to make the call. If this thing comes back that, what is it, BL is no, then it's not going to check something out to me. Because my record isn't valid. I've got a block, it's expired, I owe $600, who knows? And if the CQ comes back as no, that wasn't the right password. Don't check out to this customer. So, yeah. In a nutshell, that's it. So, okay. SQL, SIP, two heavy mysteries that I wanted to get out of the way. Because you're going to talk about this with IT sooner or later, because it's just a thing that keeps coming up. It's our bread and butter. It's sort of an underlying foundation as to how library technology works. So let's talk about talking to IT. Not this IT. Though sometimes it feels like that IT. But have you ever gone to IT and it's kind of like, or after the conversation is over, you're both like, so let's see if we can fix that. I promise no miracles. But as someone who has worked in library IT, oddly enough, I don't work in library IT now. I'm kind of an operations IT technology guy, because we'll get into that here in a minute. But I don't work directly in IT anymore, but I used to. Sometimes you need a thing. It could be a new thing, or an updated thing that was an old thing. A thing on the ILS needs changing, you don't have the permissions to do it, and your IT is the people that monitor your ILS and how it works. And a thing needs to be added to the website, and you don't have permissions to do that. Or a thing needs to be introduced into your workflow. You got a new thing, you got this new handheld scanner, and I want to try using this with the system. How do we get this set up? That kind of thing. So let's talk about getting to yes. Now sometimes, getting to yes is really easy. The director said, do this. There you go. But sometimes you have to have that conversation, like, why are we doing this? What is this? What is this thing? I've never seen one of these before. It's an iPhone. Oh. So we'll talk about getting to yes. Have your facts and figures together. This is one of those weird situations where most IT folks like me are kind of nerds. And if you come to us and you just say, hey, need to do a thing, and here's why. Okay, there you go. I have a question. Okay, here's the answer to your question. If you can have that kind of stuff already in the back of your mind, you don't have to make a spreadsheet. But have these questions together. And we'll get to why here in a moment. What are the downsides to this? Because I guarantee you, the first thing that IT is ever going to be concerned about is this secure? What are the potential security ramifications of updating, adding, changing, doing a thing to our system that we haven't done before, and what's that going to do? I don't know how many of you are still on Windows 7, but we just recently started upgrading to Windows 10 in the last 3 or 4 months. It's been out for how long? Yeah, IT isn't, yes, they're technologists, but they're not exactly known for going right after the new and shiny. And that's why, security. Because Windows 7 works, it's a known quantity, it doesn't have anything new, so it's fine. So, okay. Can you help? And then this has gotten me to yes multiple times where I just walk up, hey, we need to do a thing, and here's why we need to do it, and what can I do to make this happen? I will do it for you if you need me to, but you need to know that we're doing it. And as soon as you say things like, well, I can do that, now they don't have to do that, and that makes life easier. So if you can help, or you can provide assistance, or be there, that's always helpful too. So this is what I kept kind of alluding to. You'd be surprised how much IT doesn't know about the ILS. Because Maricopa County and Phoenix Public is fairly lucky in that they have a dedicated IT department that does IT things with the library, pretty much the library only. A lot of places, it's the city, or it's the other county, or it's some other department. And yes, they work with the ILS and they handle that stuff. And they also handle Parks and Rec, and Police Department, and Fire and Rescue, and you're just one name on the list. So in those cases, you'd be surprised how much IT doesn't know about the ILS, or how much they don't know about the technology underlying it. And that's nothing on them. I mean, the thing is, one of the reasons that they have a guy like me working at Maricopa County is because I'm a Polaris expert. I've been doing this for a while. Remember the whole 20 years things? There's no one in IT except for one person that's even been there 20 years. So, I've been doing this for a while. So you'd be surprised. You might think, well, they're library IT. Of course they know how Polaris works. Maybe not. Does your IT, think about this. Does your IT department know the difference between a bibliographic and an item record? If they don't know that, they don't know Polaris. Is there anyone they can refer to? You know what's really powerful sometimes? I want to do X and Y, and Pinell County's doing it too. Here's what it looks like. Here's how they did it. Here's someone you can talk to that speaks your language. And that's very powerful. Look, I understand that you're a very busy person, and I understand that I probably am not an expert on this, but look, Bellingham Public is doing this. And here's a contact at Bellingham Public. They've already done this. If you have questions, you can talk to them, and they can give you, relevant, easy answers. So if there's anyone you can refer them to, basically what you're doing is you are greasing the grooves. Even if this is something that's going to have to go through because of, directors, or because of executive decisions, or simply because this thing is out of date and needs to be replaced. Anytime you can make that easier, make it easy. It's just not only are you making it easier on IT, you're making it easier on yourself. So, sometimes the answer is no. So we're going to talk about that too, because sometimes the answer is just flat no. I've been told no multiple times. And the thing is that's not bad for me because I can work with no. What I have a problem working with is, dear IT, we need to do a thing, what can I do to help? 2 weeks later, I can't work with that if we just no. Okay, well, we're not going to do that. Fine, okay. But sometimes the answer is no. It could be they simply don't understand. Re-explain. Talk to others. See if you can, there might be something that just wasn't explained properly. This is weird stuff. I mean, this is something I've trained people in Polaris and ILSs and library technology for 15 years now. And the thing that I always say to all of these people is, don't feel bad if you don't get this right away. There's nothing on this planet like an ILS, unless it's another ILS. I mean, an ILS is an Excel. WordPress isn't an ILS, though you can download a plugin, but that's beside the point. There's nothing like an ILS. It's very much kind of its own beast. And if we go back to the whole thing, if you'd be surprised how much library might not know about your ILS, there's always a security concern. And this is sometimes where I fall down, because I don't always know the security concerns. Now, the problem that you'll run into sometimes, and this is where the headbutting starts, is where your IT is going to be very concerned with security and locking things down so it's safe. Whereas librarians aren't as concerned with that because we want to share everything. So that's great, that's fine. You have to come to that happy medium. It wasn't that long ago that Polaris finally hashed their passwords. Anyway, so yeah, security is always a concern. It might seem stupid, but I've got friends, and I've got friends that can walk into a hotel room, sit down, and then buy all kinds of stuff for the person in the room next to them on their credit card. So security is always a concern. There's just the workability. I mean, you're adding a new thing. Say you are. If you're taking something away, it's not as big a problem. But if you're adding a new thing, great. Who's going to manage that? Who's in charge of that? What happens if it breaks? Who do we call? Is there a support team? Is there a support contract? What's the workability of that? Because just like you, there are only one of you, and there is only one IT department, and they might have only so many people. I work on a ILS team of 3 people, me, myself, and I. So when it comes down to things in the ILS breaking, I get off work around 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, because I start work early. If the ILS goes down at 8 in the evening, guess who's VPNing? So there's the workability issue. Then there's just the capability issue. I want to do a thing, we don't support that. Well, why don't we support that? Because we're still on Windows 7. I don't know if any of you have updated to Windows 10 on your Polaris stacks. Have you had any receipt printer problems? Boy, we should have. It's because of a driver issue. There's the capability. It's not well supported. But guess what? We're going to have to do it anyway. So there's that. One does not simply install SharePoint. True story. Had someone come to me once and found out that such and such library was using SharePoint for its intranet. Now granted, our intranet isn't great, it's workable, does what it wants. I could do better with WordPress, no joke, but it does its thing. It's running on cold fusion, so help me. But anyway, but they found out that a library over there is using SharePoint. Why don't we just do that? I don't know if any of you ever worked with SharePoint, but if you have SharePoint, you need a SharePoint person. You need a person that does nothing but SharePoint. Because SharePoint, it's like a baby. You don't just set the baby down and walk away, because bad things are going to happen to that baby. So yeah, we had to explain to this person, this is me telling someone, no, don't even go to IT. Don't even ask. Because the first thing we're going to tell you is, no, we're not going to do that because we're not hiring a SharePoint person. Not only are we not purchasing it, we're not going to support it, we're not going to have someone, special on staff, we're not going to train someone. No. So that's a large overarching example, but that can, whittle down to any other little thing. Sometimes it's just impossible because they don't have the staff or they don't have the capability. And, sucks. That's life. So it's like anything else at a job. I mean, none of you, most of you look a little younger than I am. But you've worked in the field for a while. You know that the answer is not always yes. That's life. Sucks, but that's life. Anyway, so when things go wrong, this is another problem with talking to IT. things break, but which thing is actually broken? I'm going to tell you a quick story. We used to have a lady that worked in our IT department. Her name's Gretchen Garcia. Some of you might know her mom, June. She is one of my best friends. She moved to Denver, and we missed her ever since. Gretchen and I got to be friends like my second or third day on the job. Because when I was first hired, I was hired as a circulation supervisor at our Southeast Regional Library in Gilbert. I'm a nerd, been working with library computers for a while. One of our self-checks goes down. You might remember these self-checks are the one that had the big arm that came out with the laser scanner on it. That arm was perfect because you could tie the rope around it and drag that thing down. Anyway, thing broke. Printer problem. Library I used to work at before moving to Arizona, we had 2 or 3 of these things. Printers always broke on them. There was a crash. So when I put in my very first IT ticket, I already had done several basic troubleshooting things. And I put into the ticket, this is the machine, this is what's wrong, this is what's broken, this is what it's not doing, this is what I have tried to fix it. Help. Gretchen calls my boss and says, who the hell is this guy? Because this is the first time I've ever got a ticket where when I need to come out to your branch, I'm bringing a new printer because I know that's exactly what you need. Wow, that's expediting the situation, isn't it? So, things break, but which thing is actually broken? The ILS isn't working. The website isn't loading. Can you ascertain as to why? Maybe not, but try. Basic troubleshooting. This goes from, anything from my iPhone won't turn on to the ILS won't come up. Mental documentation. This comes in handy later on. When you've got a problem, chances are you're not going to wander around and try a thing. Let's try this other thing. But keep in mind what you're doing, because that'll come in handy later if you do have to put in that ticket. Because what we're going to do is help IT help you. Just like I was able to get Gretchen out to the branch fairly quickly. Hold on, English. 001. Get Gretchen out to the branch fairly quickly with a printer. I'm helping IT help me. She no longer has to come out there and troubleshoot to get to the answer that I did. What's the foundation of the problem? Printer doesn't work. That's just the example I'm going to go with. Or the ILS won't come up. We can talk about that too. Troubleshooting. What steps have you taken to see why the printer doesn't work? Or why the ILS doesn't come up? All right, so I can't get into Polaris. Can I get into the website? If the answer is yes, that's interesting. Because those are kind of 2 different things, that one's working and the other's not. That's weird. As an ILS guy, I can tell you that's weird. This is the standard mantra of IT. They even made a show about it. But the thing is, it works. My daughter came to me, literally, this is not, I swear to God, this is not a bit. Daddy, my iPhone has no sound. So the first thing I did, go through, quit all the apps. And the reason why is because in iOS, sometimes something is calling for the audio feature, and another thing's calling for the audio feature, and won't let that happen. So you quit all the apps, no dice. Reboot the phone, YouTube works fine now. I don't know what's wrong, but I know how to fix it. So, okay. That's the IT crowd solution. Remember I told you I was a theater technician? This is the other one. Is it plugged in? Is it turned on? Came into work one day. This is back at Searle. This self-check machine is down. IT's on the way. Okay, well, let me go look at it. Because, yeah, IT's on the way, but if I can fix it now, it's up now, or people can use it. So, walk over to it. Oh, that's not on. Get the keys, and I'm underneath this. Okay, no, that's fine. I walk around. Yeah, it's plugged in. And then I get down, and I notice it's plugged in. It's not plugged all the way in. Plug it in, walk around, flip the switch, machine comes up. Is it plugged in? Is it turned on? The answer to both things is yes. But you'd be surprised. I mean, there's like a whole joke about someone calling computer support, and their computer won't come up, and they go through all these troubleshooting procedures, and guy, well, could you read something off the computer for me so I know which workstation you're at? I can't, all the lights are out. I mean, it's an old joke, but that's a thing that happens. So if you can get to the foundation of the problem, at least as close as you can get, that gives IT more of a starting point than the ILS won't come up. Okay. What is working, if anything? Like I said, Polaris won't come up, but the website does. That's weird. That's not a thing that should normally happen. Obviously, you should get both. Or Polaris is working, but the website isn't. That's actually easier for me to diagnose. But what is working? Because sometimes what is broken is defined by what is not broken. So, okay, mental documentation. As you're troubleshooting, keep that mental list. I've done this, I've done this, I've done this, and nothing worked. Well, IT now knows that they don't have to do that, don't have to do that, don't have to do that, because it didn't work. That's helpful. That gets you a resolution much quicker. What did you try? Okay. And what did you do? Basically, what did you try and how did you feel about that? If with the printer issue, there were multiple things that could go wrong with that stupid thing. Paper jam, overheat because the paper jam could cause the overheat. The cable liked to come unplugged occasionally. That was fun. So you unsocket the power cable in the back of the printer and plug it back in. Modular design. And what are you doing to mitigate the issue? Because something that IT may or may not need to know, but it's never bad to share, to share the information. This isn't working, here's what we're doing in the meantime. So, and if there's nothing you can do in the meantime, that's important too. Take all of that, condense it a bit, and then give it all to IT. Send in that ticket, send the email, give them a call, whatever you need to do. Everybody's a little different. We have a ticketing system. Some people, the ticketing system is Outlook. So, So when you put in that ticket, be clear and concise. You don't have to write a novel. Because, a tech, including me, because I get the Polaris trouble tickets, I'm looking, I'm hitting the highlights. ILS won't come up. I have tried. Okay. Signed so-and-so. Okay, now I know what I need to know. Be clear and concise. Like I said, tell them what you tried, and tell them what you're doing right now to mitigate. That part is kind of important, and people always leave it out. What am I doing right now to mitigate that my self-check doesn't work? I don't have one. My customers are unhappy because we're down to self-check. And give them an idea of the criticality of the problem, but be honest. Yeah, okay, my customers are unhappy because they can't use the self-check. We do have 3 others. But afternoon's coming, the kids will be out of school, and we're going to need that 4th one. If you can get someone out here, that would be really nice. So give an idea of the criticality of the problem and be honest. So, to kind of wrap up, because you can see I'm done. SQL's a mess. SIP is even worse. But because they form the foundation of how your ILS kind of works, I like to tell people about it whenever I can, especially a crowd that doesn't get their elbows deep in the database like I do occasionally. It's not pretty in there. And with the SIP stuff, so many things use it, and yet so few people know how it actually kind of works. The way that I learned SIP was I had a project that needed to do a thing. I downloaded the 3M manual. It's like 30 pages. It's not big. And then I sat there and just wrote code. How does this? All right, I need to do this. And I'd write some code, and I'd try it. Fail, of course. And I wrote a little code. That failed. And then I realized, oh yeah, it's not talking to anything. Fun fact, you know how SIP talks to your ILS most of the time? Telnet! Telnet! The thing that was around before the internet? It has no security whatsoever? Yeah. So that can be an issue, but if you can even get into like a little help me file, just to see how kind of this stuff works, you don't have to become an expert. I'm certainly not. But it'll help you understand what's going on, and it helps you fix those problems. Because one of the other things that happens a fairly regular amount of time is the self-check-in machine has gone down. Problem communicating with server, SIP error. Okay, that tells me something. And that, once again, that's an error I want to see. That's an error I want to know. Problem communicating with circulation server, SIP error. I know exactly how to fix that. I can have you up and running in 5 minutes. 10 if I have to reboot the server. And finally, talking to IT. If you're lucky, you're talking to, friendly people that work at your system, and that's all they do. If you're not as lucky, you're talking to people that work with your city, that work with your institution, or your name on the list. But either way, be ready to explain what you need to do, what needs to be done, and how you can work with them to get the thing that you need to do, always knowing that, hey, sometimes it just can't be done for one reason or another. That's life, that sucks, that's how it is. Do you have any questions? Yes, what?
Can you give us an example of how, like a time or circumstance where you would use, well, first of all, how many people in here have used SQL before?
You got a fair amount. Go ahead.
Yeah. Can you give us an example of like why you would use SQL versus just searching in your ILS for Dan Messer? Like, what's the benefits?
That's a good question. Your ILS is really good, especially at the client level, and at the, if you're using Polaris Leap. I know a lot about Polaris, so that's why I always refer to it. But I played with Sierra, I played with Koha. But at the client level, when you ask a question, it's only going to let you ask certain questions. Now, the questions might be very powerful. If you've ever used the Polaris Find tool, you can really drill down. In training, I tell people this is how you find something on space. If you do a keyword search in the client for space, at least on our catalog, you're going to get over 20,000 hits because you're going to get books on space, you're going to get Cosmos, you're going to get Independence Day, you're going to get Airplane 2. And then I teach them how to use the options in the table, or in the staff client to drill down. Here's how you get a book for a kid on space, checked in at this branch, available now. Polaris is real good at that. What the Polaris staff client isn't good at is how many books on space do I have at this branch? What is their year-to-date circulation? That, if you're going to go through the client, you can do that, and you're going to sit there with your king key and do whatever. In a SQL environment where you can just say, hey, select, space books, or, things that have the word space in the mark record from, this table. You're going to have to add some other tables, I guarantee you. And then you can get that year-to-date circulation, 1 or 2 lines depending. So SQL allows you to answer those questions that your ILS cannot, at least not at the native level, or at least at the user level. The other thing being is, right now, as a matter of fact, I've got a project where I have to go get, thank goodness I don't have to write this in the next couple of days, but I have to go get usage information for some people living in a certain area of Queen Creek, and all I have is addresses. I can do that through the Polaris staff client by looking up every stinking address there is. Or I can feed it to a SQL database and basically say, hey, I need year-to-date circulation for patrons that match this massive string of addresses. I can get all of that through the SQL database. Basically, SQL allows you to answer the questions that your ILS cannot do on its own. So that's the best time, that, in my opinion, that's when you get the most power out of it, is because you can ask it anything. The trick is knowing how. So yeah, that answer your question?
Yeah.
Sweet. Anyone else? I promise I won't yell. You shut up. He's my friend. All right, well, if you don't have any questions, I thank you for listening to me drone on for 45 minutes. And my contact information is here. If you're sitting at your desk 2 days from now and you think of this talk, you've got other things you should be doing. But you can always email me and ask a question that way. So thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen.